The most dangerous phrase in personal finance is not YOLO, it is good debt. Because good debt is how normal, responsible people end up with a great life on paper and a negative net worth in real life. A lot of people did everything they were told was smart. They got the degree, they bought the house, they financed the reliable car, they built the credit score, and somehow, they are still drowning, not drowning in bad decisions, drowning in payments. And in this video, I am going to show you the brutal math that separates debt that builds wealth from debt that quietly destroys it. One sentence to keep in your head the whole time. Debt is only good if an external asset is producing cash flow to pay the debt. If the debt depends on your personal paycheck to survive, it is not good debt. It is a liability wearing a suit. Quick disclaimer. This is general education, not personal financial advice. Debt can be useful and debt can be deadly. Rates matter, job stability matters, emergency savings matter, and risk tolerance matters. Now let me show you the trap. Picture a normal working adult who did everything right. Diploma on the wall, mortgage payment on autopay, car loan payment on autopay, student loan payment on autopay, credit score badge shining like a trophy. He looks responsible, he feels responsible, but his life is a giant Jenga tower of bills balanced on top of one thing, his next paycheck. Now add one small breeze, a $500 emergency room bill, a dental issue, a car repair, a temporary cut in hours, and the whole tower collapses. Not because he is reckless, because he is fragile. And the reason he is fragile is because the financial system and a lot of gurus sell the middle class a watered-down version of how rich people use debt. They tell you debt is a tool. Then they hand you a chainsaw with no training and act surprised when you get hurt. So let's define the truth. Wealthy people do not call debt good because the interest rate is low. They call it good for one reason only. Something outside of them pays it, not a vibe, not future earning potential, not it will be fine. An external cash-flowing asset. For example, a rental property where tenants pay rent and that rent covers the mortgage and expenses. Or a business where customers generate revenue and that revenue covers the loan payment. If the debt gets paid even when the owner is not personally trading hours for dollars that month. Now you're talking about leverage. That is what good debt actually means. Now compare that to how good debt is sold to everyone else. Student loans, paid by your paycheck. A primary residence mortgage, paid by your paycheck. A car loan, paid by your paycheck. That is not leverage, that is dependence. And dependence is fragile. Here is a simple test that cuts through all the talking. If you stopped working for 3 months, does the debt still get paid anyway? If the answer is number, you do not have good debt. You have golden handcuffs. Now I want you to picture a scale. On one side of the scale is the monthly payment. On the other side is the cash flow that will pay it. If the cash flow comes from an external asset, the scale can balance. If the cash flow comes from your paycheck, the scale is not balancing. It is hanging off your neck. This is the mistake most people make. They classify debt by category instead of by cash flow. They say student loans are good or mortgages are good without asking the only question that matters. What pays it? So do a quick mental audit right now. Think of your debts, and next to each one say one of 2 sentences. This is paid by my paycheck. Or this is paid by asset cash flow. That exercise alone will scare you into clarity. Now let's go through the 3 biggest good debt myths that financially dismember normal people. First, the student loan illusion. For decades, student debt was marketed as the ultimate good debt. The pitch was simple. Borrow now, earn more later, it pays for itself. Sometimes that happens. But the brutal math says it often does not, or at least not the way people assume. Here is an example, just an example. $80,000 in student loans at 7% interest. For a degree that leads to a $50,000 starting salary, that is not automatically an investment. That can be a crater because the debt is certain. The career outcome is not, and timing makes it worse. Your 20s are when you need flexibility. Big student loan payments remove flexibility at the exact moment your income is lowest and your life is most unstable. So you start adulthood running a race with an iron ball chained to your ankle, while interest quietly compounds. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Student debt was sold like it was safe because you cannot discharge it easily. That is great for the lender, not always great for you. So the common mistake is borrowing based on hope. People calculate best-case income, not realistic outcomes. They borrow for a brand name, not for a return on investment. They borrow because it is normalized, not because it makes sense. If you already have student loans, this is not about shame. This is about strategy. You need margin. You need a plan to increase income. You need to control expenses. And you need to attack high-interest debt like it is an emergency, because it is. If you are considering student loans, compare the total cost of the degree to the realistic income path, not the dream path. Now the second sacred cow, the primary residence mortgage. Financial advisors love to say a mortgage is good debt because a house is an asset, but a primary residence is a weird asset. It might appreciate over time, but it also drains cash flow constantly. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, renovations you feel forced to do because you live there, and interest, the biggest invisible bill of them all. So yes, the home value might rise, but your checking account still gets siphoned every month. And the math on a 30-year mortgage can be brutal. For example, $400,000 at 7% for 30 years. Over the full life of that loan, you can pay the bank a massive amount in interest, often close to or even more than the original price depending on the exact numbers. People do not feel that cost because it is smeared across decades, but it is real. And then there is the equity illusion. Home equity feels like wealth until you try to use it. You cannot buy groceries with equity. You cannot pay bills with equity unless you sell, refinance, or borrow against it. So you can be up on paper and still be broke on Friday. That is why people become house rich and cash broke. Common mistake. Calling your primary home an investment while ignoring cash flow and liquidity. Wealth is not only net worth on a spreadsheet, it is options. So evaluate your primary residence honestly. Do not ask only, will it go up? Ask, does this payment make my life fragile? If the payment requires perfect income forever, the debt is not good, it is a chain. Now the third myth, the one social media pushes hardest, leverage. You have heard it everywhere. The rich use debt to get richer. True, and that is exactly why it becomes dangerous advice for normal people. Because the rich use debt attached to cash-flowing assets, with buffers, liquidity, and downside plans. The middle class hears the word leverage and applies it to consumer purchases. Bigger house, new car, lifestyle upgrades, all financed because the payment is manageable. That is not leverage. That is financial suicide with nicer packaging. Leverage only works when the asset produces cash flow with enough consistency to service the debt and still leave margin. If the debt relies on you showing up to work every day forever, the debt is using you, not the other way around. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Banks want you to believe in good debt because it keeps you in payments for decades. The richest product in consumer finance is not the car. It is the loan, not the house, the interest, not the degree, the payment schedule. So the common mistake is confusing low interest with low risk. Low interest debt can still be high risk if your cash flow is tight and your savings are thin. Debt does not care how responsible you feel. Debt only cares whether you pay on time. So here is the strategy that actually protects you. Separate consumer debt from productive debt. Consumer debt buys things that do not pay you. Productive debt, used carefully, buys assets that generate income. If you do not have a reliable external cash flow covering the payment, your mission is not leverage. Your mission is stability. That means eliminating consumer debt, building a cash buffer, and only then considering leverage for income-producing assets if it fits your situation. Now let's make this concrete with a simple comparison. Two people, same age, similar motivation. Both want a good life. Financed Fred follows the popular good debt path. He goes to an expensive school with big loans because it is an investment in himself. He buys a large house early because real estate always goes up. He finances a new car because you need something reliable. Fred has the middle-class dream and a monthly payment stack that eats most of his paycheck. Cash flow Chris takes a different route. He keeps school costs low. Community college first, then transfer or training tied to a job outcome. He drives a cheap cash car. He keeps housing reasonable. He builds savings and skills. Then Chris takes his first real loan not for a lifestyle upgrade, but for an asset, a duplex for example, where rent from a tenant helps cover the mortgage. Now fast forward 15 years, Fred has nicer stuff, but his bank account stays thin because his lifestyle is funded by monthly obligations. One disruption becomes a crisis. Chris started smaller, but he built a machine in the background. His assets start carrying weight. He has margin. He has options. Fred looks successful. Chris becomes resilient. And resilience is what turns into wealth, because wealth is not the ability to buy nicer things on payments. Wealth is the ability to survive disruptions without panic, and to build assets that keep working even when you are tired. Now let's land this with the brutal truth. The middle class is taught to love debt because debt is highly profitable for financial institutions. Good debt is often a marketing phrase that makes you comfortable signing a contract. Debt is a chainsaw. In trained hands, it can harvest cash-flowing assets. In untrained hands, it can financially dismember you. Debt is not a tool for the middle class to get rich. It is a tool for banks to get rich off the middle class. Stop buying golden handcuffs and calling it jewelry. So here is what I want you to do after this video. Not tomorrow. Today. Look at every debt you have and ask one question. What pays it? If the answer is my paycheck, treat it like a liability and build a plan to reduce fragility. If the answer is an external cash-flowing asset, then you can evaluate it like a tool, with margin, buffers, and risk management. Now comment below with the worst piece of good debt advice you have ever received, and whether it helped you or hurt you, and if you want to keep unlearning the system with math instead of slogans. Subscribe.